And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Right now, very happy to have on Ta-Nehisi Coates, award-winning author, journalist, professor at Howard University. His award-winning book, Between the World and Me, I think people know very well about that. He's got a brand new book. It's a gripping bestseller, The Message. Ta-Nehisi, nice to see you. I got to meet you recently and our friend Rula, who's been on the show a lot of times. So it's great to see you back on the show. Thanks for being here, my friend.
Oh, thanks for having me, Dean.
Sure. So the book is a great book. And of course, all I want to talk about is the Palestine part, but
No, it's cool. We can do that.
it's fine. Well, just tell people. I mean, you go to Senegal, you go to South Carolina, and Palestine. And why those three locations? I imagine it wasn't frequent flyer miles. There was some other reason. Like, it's a great trip. I get a lot of frequent flyer miles. I can go anywhere I
Yeah.
want. So, what is the common thread and why you would pick those three places?
The common thread is these are three places where our story and stories either told about them or stories that the places tell really have great impact on the world of politics. In Senegal, for instance, in the Cape of at the Cape of No Return, the epic of enslavement, which really is the place where you find the genesis of white racism and all of the theories of white supremacy, etc. In South Carolina, where those theories are made manifest in many ways, specifically in the banning of my book Between the World and Me, or the
Yeah.
attempted banning of that. Um, and then all the way over to Palestine, where white supremacy as a global force in all of its manifestations really come home in a very hard way.
I just want to say, first of all, it's such a well-written book. It's very compelling. And thank you for writing about Palestine. Now, look, most of it, not all of it, most of it I knew, but I know my fellow Americans don't know. And
Right.
you putting things in there was really great because I know people are reading it. And some things just jumped out at me. You talk about, in essence, that when it comes to Israel, we've heard like half the story. We've heard about the story, the Holocaust, the need for a Jewish homeland, but we haven't learned the other side, like as if there was nobody there. I mean, you make the point, you quote those lines about, you know, a land, people with no land and a land with no people, and they made the desert bloom and all that kind of stuff, as if my great grandfathers and generations of Palestinians that live in the West Bank ate dirt or didn't exist. They were there.
Right.
And
Right.
so, why was it important to you to share the story and even the early origins of Zionism and Theodore Herzl with readers?
I think because I was, and we are all as Americans laboring under a lie. And we're laboring under a very comforting story and a comforting fairy tale. And that is that one of the greatest crimes of the West, the industrialized murder of millions of Jewish people and other minorities, um, under the banner of white supremacy, by the way,
Hmm.
that somehow has been absolved by the awarding of a homeland to the group of people that suffered most from that crime. And that is a simplistic narrative of what actually happens. First of all, it doesn't interrogate, exactly what how that homeland was created, why it was created, what brought it into being, the theories behind it, and then obviously, second of all, it doesn't involve who actually paid the price for that, who is now paying the price, for the need to absolve the West of one of its great crimes.
It's really remarkable. There are things in your book like the Deir Yassin massacre, which I don't think anyone's ever heard of really, except for Palestinians. We know this story. You learn it from your family, and then you read about it later. There was something that you put in your book that I thought was really striking, how the early Zionist leaders, Herzl, Jablonski, others, how they viewed the indigenous people, how they viewed my family as we were less than human. We were inferior as a people, and they were going to bring civilization there. And this is way before the Holocaust. We're talking like 1818,
Yeah,
1880,
yeah.
1890, looking at this area, and they're going to love us there. We're going to bring civilization. And it really is like the Western idea of the way we looked at Native Americans living here and
Hmm.
people in South America. And it's just so striking to read that.
Yeah, and I think like the hard thing for people to accept is Zionism is a Western European idea,
Hmm.
and it bears all the unfortunate markers of that, like this notion of going somewhere and civilizing people, or in the case of African Americans, bringing people over to be civilized. it's just a thing that comes out of that epic. And one of the things that I think confused me for a long time was like about this debate about whether is Zionism colonialism or not. And then you go read the documents, and the Zionists themselves very proudly say that they're colonialists. And the rejoinder to that is, and why wouldn't they? Colonialism was popular at the time. Like that was the way people talked. It's not that, Zionists were particular or special or any,
Hmm.
like in their evil or whatever. It was not an original notion. The idea that certain people were civilized and certain people were not was a thing that most people in the West believed. And so the fact that you find it in Zionism is completely unsurprising and expected.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, when at the time when they were using the word colonialism, there was not the negative connotation there is today.
No,
Words
no,
change. They have a
no.
different value and
Right.
meaning. And now you're like, oh, it's jarring. Then it's like, we're
Yeah.
going to colonize this land. We're going to make a
Right.
Jewish homeland. Like, okay, sounds fair to me. Do you have the political clout? Well, we know some people in the British government. We know Arthur Balfour. Maybe he'll do the
Right.
Balfour Declaration. Like, very
Right.
interesting. And that's how you get where the West goes. And then the Holocaust happens, and the world says, the Jewish people have suffered so much they need a homeland, which, you know what, I agree. And to be selfish, if it wasn't my family that it landed on, like the thing from the Spike Lee movie that I didn't land on Plymouth Rock landed on me, like it would be different perhaps. But when it's
Yeah.
you, it's personal. And you're like,
Yeah.
how, and I say it all the time to fellow Palestinians, we didn't choose this struggle. We were born into it, and we're going to have to carry it for the end of time. That's us. And I don't mean any kind of resistance struggle. I just mean the struggle of being Palestinian, being demonized for who you are, that you're less than human, you're not deserving of a homeland, or you're the bad guy. No matter, even when your children are killed, you're the bad guy. That's what it's like being Palestinian in America.
Dina, I want to complicate this even a little bit more,
Uh-oh.
because no, 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 not at all. I
Okay.
think I think it's a great discussion, great discussion. But I think one of the things that gets missed here is after the Holocaust, the West was not exactly a welcoming place for the survivors of it.
Mhm.
The United States of America was not a welcoming place. I say that to say that had many of the survivors of the Holocaust been able to go back home, resume their lives in freedom, pursue life, liberty, and I suspect most of them would have. I suspect more, and they were robbed of that. And the answer was to then rob somebody else of their land. And that is like I put it in that context because I just want to be very clear. This is not about Jewish people themselves solely. This is not about Zionism,
Mhm.
solely. This is about the West. This is about Europe. It's about America and how it looks at and is divided up much of the world, and how much war and violence has come from that. Our hands are all over this.
Sure. I mean, the UN created the state of Israel. They were warned. I mean, for your whole life when you're Palestinian, you read this stuff. I read the UN debate, transcripts where the Arab leaders like, don't do this. It's going to cause problems with the Jewish people in our countries who are living here and they're having great lives. If you do this, and then if you evict Palestinians and Arabs, there could be a backlash in our country. There was all the things they warned came to fruition of what it was like. And I'm chatting with Ta-Nehisi Coates about his great new book, The Message. You write in the book here about the message from Israel to Palestinians living in the West Bank and in Israel was, quote, you'd really be better off somewhere else. And
Yeah.
I read that line to my fiance, who's Palestinian. She's from Haifa. She's in Haifa now. Like she's visiting her family because visiting during a war doesn't phase people when you're grew up with war.
Yeah.
So she's in a bomb shelter and we talk. I read her that line and she's like, she goes, yeah, she's right. She's an actress doing a whole one person show called Home about being an Arab born in Israel and how you
Mhm.
don't belong anywhere. You don't belong with the
Yeah.
Arabs because you're Israeli. You don't belong with the Israeli Jews because you're Palestinian, you're Muslim, and you don't belong in America. But when I read that line to her, it really resonated. The idea that it is to make your life within Israel, it's not violent, it's more uncomfortable and discrimination. Where my family is in the West Bank, it can be more violent. Gaza, the extreme example, the West Bank, taking of land, checkpoints, limitations. Right now, literally, I should just tell you, I just learned this 2 days ago. The settlers now won't let my cousins and my family harvest their olive trees, which they've
Yeah.
harvested for generations. They just said, no, we're coming for you. And they're in the West Bank near Bethlehem. And it just
Yeah.
continues. They're telling them, you'd be better off someplace else.
And the sad part about that to me is if you read, I mean, it's sad in and of itself, period. But that is exactly the sentiment that was delivered to Jewish people in Europe for centuries. You'd be better off somewhere else. And like somewhere along the line, we have to find notions of liberation that do not depend on the destruction of other people, that do not depend on the destruction of their heritage, their culture, their families, the taking of their land, genociding them, if that's a verb, etc. Like we have to find a better way, you know what I mean? Where we don't,
Hmm.
I don't know, just deal with our sins by perpetrating them upon other people.
It, there was a moment in your book that I really found a lot of moments compelling. One is that you went to an event in the West Bank because you went to visit Palestine for 10 days. You spoke to Israelis. What we can touch on that in a second, like the breaking the silence people. But you went to an event where a Palestinian author quoted from your book, and you wrote,
Yeah.
you felt the warmth of solidarity of conquered peoples." And I know you said someone shared that with you, and you put that in the book and you quoted it. What were you getting at there?
When I wrote the book, I couldn't quite nail this, but I know what it is now. It is loss. It's like a kind of mourning of something that you've lost. And people who have lost things, maybe particularly at the hands of Europe, at the hands of America, at the hands of the West, like they know what that is. Do you know what I mean? Like they know what it feels like to have your whole humanity denied, so that somebody can, plunder you or steal from you, etc. And so this is my first trip. I was
Hmm.
actually in Haifa when that happened. I was in Haifa.
Ah.
We had come from Hebron that day, and we had gone up to Haifa. And it was this very emotional day. And like the person didn't know I was in the audience. And to have that quoted in that way, man, was just mind blowing.
I can only imagine. And Haifa does have a great deal of a coexistence within Israel. It's a unique city in that regard. Not perfect, but at least it has coexistence. People can
Yeah.
coexist. That's not an issue. So, you also talk about the Palestinian experience, and I get the sense conjured up the Black American experience in certain places for you. Can you share a little bit about where you saw that, where you felt that?
Yeah, and there are probably multiple frames to look at this through, and I only have my own, and I only have my own experience, and so I just
Hmm.
will humbly submit that. But I just will tell you, man, it's like you are riding down the road to the West Bank, and somebody tells you you're with this group of people, so you can only go on this road, because we don't allow them on this other road. Um, if you were born black in America, you know exactly what that is. You see signs saying, Israelis can't go here or Palestinians can't go here or whatever. You know exactly what that is. You see somebody tell you this license plate is for this group of people and this license plate is for this other group of people. You know what that is. You go to, see a settlement as I did,
Hmm.
and you see, these sprawling, sort of, I don't, essentially suburbs,
Hmm. Yeah.
suburbs, basically suburbs, with well-manicured lawns and
Right.
country clubs, et cetera. And then, just a short walking distance away, you see people who don't know when the water is going to be turned on or turned off. And you know what that is. Like you recognize it. And the word we use for it is segregation, Jim Crow, apartheid. Like it, there has been some amount of criticism that, I didn't, like 10 days is not long enough. I knew that in 10 minutes. I could have came right back home and told you what exactly, like one day would have done it. I'd have told you exactly what that was. And
Right.
no one has yet to tell me that I didn't see what I saw. No one has yet to say, no, it's actually not segregation. No, it's actually not separate but unequal. And so we recognize it.
And I appreciate that so much that you put it down in writing for others to read. But when you go through the West Bank, there's the settlers' roads that are beautiful, and there's the Palestinians' roads, which are garbage.
Right.
And
Right.
water allocations, freedom of movement. I did a comedy show
The
in the West
justice
Bank.
system, the justice
Oh
system,
my, yeah, that.
the
But
idea that if you are a settler on the West Bank, you have a literal separate court and justice system from the people who have been living there from I'm sorry to cut you off. Forgive
no,
me
it's
for
fine.
doing this, but it's like some guy, you know what I mean, who's been living in New Jersey for 3 generations because of his ethnicity can move over to the West Bank and have a civil justice system where people who have been living there for generations are subject to the military. this is dead wrong. That's just dead. That's completely indefensible.
It is. And look, at this point, there's no way to get around what is discrimination in the West Bank. B'Tselem, which is an Israeli human rights group, and others have called the West Bank, what's going on, apartheid. I don't know if you can call apartheid within Israel. It's not racial, it's religious. There's certainly discrimination within Israel, there's no doubt. But certainly the West Bank, absolutely an apartheid. And I tell people, like, don't debate that. If you want to defend it, you can defend it. The same way if you look at Netanyahu now, what he's done in Gaza are war crimes. There's no
Yeah,
debating, it's war crimes. If you want to
yeah,
defend the war crimes, we can have that discussion.
yeah.
But let's be intellectually honest with each other. It's apartheid, it's war crimes. And look, to your point, you could be an American who's Jewish and says, I want to go to Israel, and you can be a citizen. You could be Palestinian like my family, and if you're Christian or Muslim, you don't have the same rights.
That's
And
right.
and if you want to defend that, you can, but that's still discrimination. But you
Right.
can, if you want to defend it through
And Dean,
history,
that's within Israel too. I think it's important
right,
that we highlight that. You know what I
sure.
mean? Like it is discrimination by law against Palestinian Israeli citizens within, like even the state at its high, it's still not equal. It's still not equal.
No, and I could tell you firsthand. I mean, my future in-laws. I mean, we're together forever. My fiance. We're getting married. Inshallah. You know what inshallah means? God willing. Like
God willing, yes,
it's
of
up to
course.
God at this
Yeah.
point. But like her brother, a couple years ago, was job interview went all the way to the top of the thing, and they said, "Your name's Danny," and it's really not. It's Jamal.
Mm,
And he goes, "Well, I went," and he goes, "Well, oh, shouldn't you have told us?" And they didn't hire him. And one of the other
mm,
ways they did it was very subtle. You had to do military service, after military
yeah.
service.
Yeah.
And it's in my fiance's one person show, a big part of that, how only Jewish Israelis serve in the military. Arabs can, you
Right.
can volunteer. Certain things, you can't fly jets, you can't do certain things, but you can volunteer if you want. But the idea was discrimination, like, oh, you didn't serve because, and that was sort of a conversation starter among Israeli Jews. Or where did you serve? But if you don't have that common experience, there's
And by
discrimination.
serve, it means like basically you are reinforcing an occupation or like, you know what I mean? Like that's what you have to do. Like that would be your entree into society. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's how you, like James Baldwin, how you earn your white card, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody came here,
Yep.
they were Italian and they were Irish, but you want to get your
Yeah.
white card, you got to join the subjugation of black people. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting too to see the Palestinians over the years gravitate to to your work, to rappers, to American rappers. They
Yeah.
love them and finding that common ground. And you talk about the settlers, like my cousin's house is below a settlement, and people think settlement's like a trailer park. I so appreciate you
Right. That's what
making
I
clear.
thought.
No, it's a spawn. But the settlers, for fun, my cousin would show me bullet holes in their house just for fun. The settlers would shoot down bullets down at their house. That's
Yeah.
the world they live in, and they can't call anybody. No one's
Yeah.
coming for them. You can call
Yeah.
the Israeli military and say the settlers are shooting. Good
Yeah.
luck. I mean,
Yeah.
that's their life. They're
Yeah.
disposable people to this day. Like that,
Hmm.
I'm so upset that my cousins can't farm their own land. This happened 2 days ago. This is
Hmm.
our lives beyond our control. There was something you mentioned about journalists, that I think is so important. You wrote about journalists are the ones playing God. It is the journalists who decide which sides are legitimate and which are not, which covered, which are pushed out of the frame. And on some level, they're the ones deciding humanity and who we should care for and who we should not care for. Can you share a little bit about your experience? Because you had a great line here. It's not a conspiracy, but it's not a coincidence there's so few Palestinian voices in US media. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. It doesn't require conspiracy. It doesn't require a group of people, getting together. It's so much more simpler than that, and insidious. You know what I mean? It is the fact that journalism itself is part of American journalism, is part of the American state. And so there is deference given to certain people and skepticism given to other people. So for instance, I mean, I can speak of this locally. Until relatively recently, this has just begun to change. Most reporters who covered the inner city just took cops' word for it. Like the notion that cops would
Mhm.
lie, you know what I mean,
Right.
was not a thing that was really like the skepticism was not really present in American journalism. And that extends all the way up to the military, right? So there's not a skepticism really in the same way, of the American military. And so the things that the American military and the American state decide are important, there's a basic sense that these people aren't crazy, even if there are debates about it, a basic sense that these people aren't crazy. And so people who say, yes, they are crazy, in fact, they're supporting apartheid. Like that's what's
Right.
happening right now. They're supporting apartheid. They are supporting and arming, the destruction of 2% plus of the population of Gaza. They are supporting the bombing of hospitals under the thin justification that some Hamas operative or whoever was present there. And that is crazy. That is deeply immoral. And that is the perspective that I wish to write from. Good luck finding a job in some of the hollow places of mainstream media right now. Good luck with that. Good luck. That it's very hard. It's very, very difficult. That's not conspiracy. That's
Right.
not, it's bad. It's
Right.
definitely bad, but it doesn't require, folks going into a room to talk about it. It's structural,
Very much so. And for people like our mutual friend Marula Jabril, who used to be an MSNBC
Yeah.
contributor, then got fired because she went on air and criticized their own coverage, which is daring and it's
Yeah.
risky because maybe behind the scenes might be more effective. But in any event, she lost that. But MS has got a few people. I have Ayman, my buddy Ayman, and
Yeah.
Ali Velshi's good, and Mehdi used to be
Yeah.
there, but I'm still friends with Mehdi. But CNN's got zero Arab American, zero Muslim American contributors, and you go, that's not a coincidence. You got everybody.
Yeah.
Fareed's been there forever. I know Fareed. He's the only one who's Muslim. At least
Right.
got that a little bit. But
Right.
and there are some other great reporters who do a good job advocating for some impartiality. But it would be great with lived experience for someone to
Yeah.
be like, hey, this is my family. Here, we're going to talk about the Middle East, and you can have people on who can talk about the other side with experience and life and connection through faith or family. And our side's like, nope, no one's there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's bad. It's really, really bad. And I think ultimately it's bad for everyone. And it's specifically bad for Americans because we are poorly informed. We are poorly informed. We are making our judgments and our thoughts about a system of oppression that is told through the lens of the people that benefit from it. And that's just not great. That's not great.
It's
I didn't go on that trip without my share of skepticism of
mhm.
what Israel was doing. I was shocked. I was shocked by what I saw.
Uh, and I so appreciate you. And before we wrap up, because some criticism like, oh, you didn't talk to Israelis. You did talk to Israelis.
I
You talked
did.
to
I just didn't
people
talk to the right ones.
who served in the IDF, who served in the Israeli
Right.
military, who were part of
Yeah.
breaking the silence. And what did you learn from them?
Um, that it is really, really hard to be born into a system or state that tells you you are history's ultimate victim and to reconcile yourself to the fact that actually know you are making victims of other people. That's some tough work, man.
Yeah,
That's some tough work. And I know people have all sorts of opinions on, these guys and their politics, but it is, I mean, I say this, even about America, like, to be like white in America and to have to ultimately face what the complexity of what America is, some of its deepest moral problems, is very, very hard because you're tied into it in a certain kind of way. And I think it's doubly hard over there.
and that's your great chapter in South Carolina. So if it makes you discomfort or anxiety, just ban it. So no one has to know that history.
That's
So we don't
right.
have to have
That's
uncomfortable
exactly it.
conversations. It is unreal to see as America moves backwards in that way. Well, Ta-Nehisi, again, the book is the message. It's a great book. It's a bestseller. It's beautifully written. It's so compelling. Thank you for including the Palestinian cause. You didn't have to. You got a lot of
I did
pushback.
have to. No, I did. I
Well,
did have to.
all right,
I
good.
did have to.
You
Yes.
did.
No, there was nothing else. I
I didn't
appreciate
want
the
to say that you
compliment.
had to, but
No, I had to. There was nothing else. There was nothing else. It had to get done.
well, I hope you'll come back on again. Anytime you have any project or anything, please reach out. I'd love to have you on to chat about it. And phenomenal book, and I look forward to talking to you in the future, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Dean.
Take care, brother.